Welcome to another episode of the Pentecast podcast. My name is Andrew Bella, and this is some of the episodes that I have recorded since being in Oklahoma. So the way I want to introduce these episodes while Ryan's back in Georgia is, alongside me is my aunt's husband, better known as my uncle, Brother Lyndall Birdsong.
Not married.
Brother Lyndall has so graciously set up some testimonies from the people that have been near and dear to their hearts. And so we are actually here in Crosslight, and I wanted to mention that. We're in Crosslight Chapel, right? Is that what it's called? Crosslight Chapel. And we've set up here, and you can see that we have Dusty and Laura Straight with us here on the podcast. And I have heard Dusty's story from a distance, so this is actually an honor to get to hear your story. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Aunt Cindy is next to Brother Lyndall. So this is the most I've ever recorded. So I've got the biggest group I've ever had here. But you two are obviously, this is my first time meeting Laura, but you two are obviously very, very special to Brother Lyndall and Sister Cindy. So I thought it would be fitting for them to open up this podcast and kind of give the introduction to who you guys are.
Well, Andrew, right behind these guys is a saying that I preached a sermon one time called "A Place for Strangers," and these guys are as close to describing that as anybody that I know of, and especially Brother Dusty here. We work with a lot of unchurched people, and unchurched people are just different than folks like us I was raised in church all my life. They don't speak the same language we do. They haven't had the same experiences. And really, in some ways, that's almost a blessing because they don't come with all the baggage we do.
You got that right.
But anyway, these guys would be the first to tell you that they're a work in progress, but I have saw what God has done in their lives. And it's been one of the most amazing things I have ever saw in my life, to see what God has done. And even before we met them, God was already laying out the plan. And but anyway, Brother Dusty will start it off, I'm sure. But I want to tell you this. Brother Dusty didn't know anything about church. Didn't even know there was a God. He really didn't.
Just never encountered him, I guess.
Yes, and God gave him a miraculous event in his life, almost like what we read about the Apostle Paul seeing the great light.
So my name is Dusty Straight, and I used to be an addict. I used to be a sinner. I'm still not, should I say,
what you'd like to be?
Yeah, what I'd like to be.
A work in progress.
Yes, I am a work in progress. And
join the club.
Short every day. There's times that I regret some of the things that I do, but so
we all do.
I came from a long line of drug addicts, alcoholics, and just sinners, and it led me into a path of unrighteousness and unholiness, and for a long time, for over 20-something years, that's how I lived. That's what I did. And
Brother Dusty, can I interject this here? Because a lot of people watching won't realize we're in Oklahoma, the land of the red man. And Brother Dusty's dad was, would you tell him a little bit about that? Would you mind telling him what tribe you are and all that, Indian tribe?
So I'm a Native American, and my dad, or should I say my family, used to run heroin, and we're some of the biggest heroin dealers around in Oklahoma. And so,
but what tribe, brother? Was
Cheyenne Arapaho.
Cheyenne Arapaho, yeah.
Arapaho, and so that was just that livelihood and that lifestyle was bestowed in me from at an early age, yeah. And but like I was saying, I just got tired of living that lifestyle. I'd had guns pulled out on me. I've been ran over. I've had hot shots given to me, and I was still alive, and I just didn't know what was going on or what was really real anymore. I should have been dead. There are a number of times that when that gun got pulled out on me, it was about as close for me to you, Andrew, and he pulled the trigger, and I heard the hammer hit, and I looked him dead in the eyes like I'm looking you right now and told him to do it 6 different times, and he pulled the gun out and set it down on the table, and I kind of laid back, and almost made me feel like I was invincible, but yet at the same time, it made me realize that, there was something else out there. There was a higher power out there, and there was something I needed to do. But that still didn't change my life until that one morning I woke up and I was just tired of living that lifestyle. I was getting ready to try to find a way to get on the level that I usually get on. And
you're talking about getting high.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just went to God, and I asked him, if he was really real, and I didn't know where else to turn to or what else to do except for to ask him if he was really real. And if, when I did that, it was amazing. This light shined out of this picture and just consumed me.
Let me stop you right there. I've never asked you this question, I don't think, but at this point, how long had you actually been a drug addict? Do you know?
Oh, let's say.
When did you actually get started as a child?
At about the age of 15, 16, and it was probably about the age of 32, 33, okay, so maybe even 35 that when this happened.
Right. Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, I never asked you that question, but that's a long time.
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah, 20 years, at least 20 years.
And you're talking about heroin.
No, just meth and weed.
Well, meth.
Yeah.
You're talking about pretty potent stuff.
Yeah.
It's not I'm going to quit today.
Right, yeah. So, and I just asked him for a sign, and it was just amazing. This light came down out of this picture, and I was sitting in this room, and it just consumed me. And, it took everything away from me. It took my sight, my speech, my motion, everything. But yet, I just felt so wonderful, man. There was just such a wonderful feeling there that it was just unbelievable.
Joy unspeakable.
Just can't describe it, I wasn't scared. I wasn't afraid. There was just peace and love there. It was like somebody grabbed me and just wrapped me up and was just holding me, and
that was foreign to you.
Yeah, it was real foreign to me.
And brother, if I remember your testimony, up till this time, you really didn't even know if there was a God, right?
Right. I'd been to church a few times. There had been some people that had taken me to church and invited me to church, but that was when I was younger, and I really didn't, should I say, take anything out of it, I guess the seed got planted, right. They say that there's seeds out there that get planted and get sowed. And it took a little bit to kind of grow and to nurture, but it was just amazing. Like I said, I didn't even know what was going on, and I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't even know if he was real, and I just asked him just to give me a sign to let me know if he was even real or if everything that had been happening was just coincidence and just luck. And he gave me that sign, and I knew that everything wasn't luck, that there was a higher power out there and that there was something else out there that I needed to be doing. And it kind of scared me, and I didn't know at first what it was, but when I asked him to give me that sign, that light came down, and he told me to build it and they'll listen. And everything came back to me, and I was still sitting in that room, and I was getting ready to get high. I had the stuff to get high with in one hand and the thing to get high with in the other, and I threw one way and I threw one the other way, and I got up and I walked around, and the devil was trying to convince me and tell me that what had just happened wasn't real, and that it was somebody was playing a trick on me. And I walked around the city for 2 or 3 hours trying to convince myself that wasn't real. And the Spirit came upon me and just was like, look, what are you doing? Why are you out here trying to tell yourself that wasn't real? You asked him for a sign. You deliberately went and asked him to give you a sign to let you know if he was real, and he did, without a shadow of a doubt, that was him. And so as much as I didn't want to, I had to go back to him, because last time when I did that, it was just a little bit out there, that was just a little bit, woo. So
sound like Gideon right now. All right, Lord, one more time.
Yeah, well, I was like,
good job, but one more time.
I was like, I don't even want to do it one more time, but I don't know what it is that I'm still needing to do. I don't know who it is that needs to listen. And so I went back to him and I asked him, what it was that I needed to do. And he said, a temple, So I started trying to figure out whether I needed to go back to school or whether I need to learn how to become
You were that, and I don't use this word in any derogatory manner, but what you're saying is you were that ignorant to the gospel.
Amen.
That when he said, build my temple, you're literally thinking, I'm going to have to
Some kind of
construct
big building.
something.
Yeah. I'm like, you want me to build you a church?
What are you talking about?
And so
Here's an old druggie that God's wanting to build a church. And he said one time, he said, God, you don't want me to build anything, it all fall down.
I'm liable to kill everybody that goes into it.
You know what, though? But right then and there, your heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
You're willing.
Yeah.
Lord, you're just going to have to give me the blueprints.
Right. So I had to go back to him and like, hey, look, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this.
Right.
But so, and I asked him just to lead me in the way that I needed to go and put people in my life that I need in my life to help me build a temple, and I finally found out that my body is his temple, and that our bodies are his temple.
Right.
And
Temple of the Holy Ghost.
Right.
that's where I found myself here with these wonderful people, and I've just been steadily just trying and working and just keeping him in my life,
But Andrew, he told us too that about that time you went back to jail again.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever heard this before, but how many years of your life up to that time until you got saved did you think you had spent in county jail?
So I'd say every other year I'd spend anywhere from 6 to 7 months in there at a time, and then there'd be times that I was 3 or 4 years that I didn't go, but when I went back it was like almost getting to wintertime, and I knew that if I got out in the wintertime,
Just throw a brick through the window.
I'd have to do something just dramatic to try to stay alive or get out of the west. So I just try to postpone it as long as there was times that I was up in there for about 13 months, just sitting there.
Right here in Oklahoma City in the county jail. But you know what's amazing to me about his testimony is through all of this, Andrew, and I know the rest of the story, but through all of this, God had a plan working out for Brother Dusty that he didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
And even through all the jails and all that stuff, and it looked like he's going to prison. I want him to tell that too. And instead of going to prison, God had something else. That's where we found him.
So the last time that I went to jail, I ended up getting caught up on some prior charges that I didn't ever take care of, and I had a couple warrants out for my arrest, and they were just done with me. They were like, look, you've been doing this over and over. We've let you out, and you've never ever taken care of anything that you needed to take care of. You never ever done anything that you said you was going to do. We're just done messing with you. You're going to have to go. And I think this time I fought it for about 12 months. I sat in there for 12 months trying to get them to give me some kind of rehab or to give me probation again or something to get me out. And finally, at that last time, that they were just like, look, you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to just take it and go. And I'd prayed that night before, and we prayed in a prayer circle, and I asked God just to, if this is it, then so be it. I'll go ahead and go. And I knew that the Lord is strong in the prisons, and there's been a lot of people that has found God in the prison and learned a lot about the Lord. So I was like, if this is it, then this is it. I'll go do my time, and I will sit down and I will learn and study and do as much as I can for him. And it was amazing. I got there, and my public defender came up to me. He's like, look, he said, I don't know what happened. He said, but somehow, some way, they decided to go ahead and give you the rehab, the Bridge of Life program. It's a 12-month program, and it's faith-based. And he said, if you complete it, then they'll let you be on probation until you serve your time. And I was like, okay, well, let's do it. If
It'd be sitting in jail.
Yeah.
And I want to interject this. We got a young man that's been coming to church here just recently, and we had no idea that that he was connected in any way with Brother Dusty, but some way you guys are kinfolks. The guy that comes in the wheelchair.
Chris, yeah.
Chris. So anyway, he's been coming. He actually got shot by a drive-by shooter in another drug deal. This is the life they came out of. He's been in a wheelchair now since he was 28, I believe.
For a long time, yeah.
But anyway, I want Cindy to tell you what he told her about Brother Dusty. Sitting here, we look at Brother Dusty. He looks so wholesome. You can't believe that he really was what he was.
So I was sitting across from him at lunch 3 or 4 Sundays ago, and I was just asking him about their connection, and he said, I was just thanking God for what a wonderful work he had done in Dusty's life. And he said, you can't even imagine. He was just, words like this. He said, Dusty was one that you could look at him and he was just blank. There was nothing there. He was so strung out on drugs,
And we saw
couldn't
this so many
hardly-
times on the streets, and it does. You look in somebody's eyes, and it's like there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's like their
can't
spirit's
imagine
gone.
that. Yeah.
And I was just telling Brother Chris, I was like, I just can't even imagine him that way, because he had already started in the Bridge to Life program when we met him, and God had already started the work in his life. I can't even imagine him like that,
Aren't you glad how the devil don't forget? But when you go to God and ask him, he says, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
As far as the east is removed from the west.
Amen. Amen.
Andrew, there was actually Andrew and another guy that comes here, Brother Steve, that was kind of in the Bridge to Life at the same time. And it's pretty amazing how God kind of worked both of their lives out at the same time. Brother Steve was kind of the same way. He had never even held down a regular job full time, and God just done a work in their lives, and so we're working with them. And anyway, they're in the Bridge to Life program. We'd go by and pick them up for lunch. I used to tease them. We'd just drive by and see these two guys with their thumb out, and knew we was going to have to feed them that day.
Oh, Lord.
But the main ingredient was these guys were so hungry for God.
And
They
ready
just
for
wanted
a life change.
Yes.
Ready for a life
Ready
change.
for a life change.
Yes.
Wanting a life change.
So at the Bridges of Life program is where we left off with you.
Right.
Yeah. What was it about that where you were just at your wit's end?
So I talked to some people in jail and to some other people about the building a temple and trying to figure out what it was exactly I needed to build and what I needed to do, whether it was a church or something like that. And that's where I came to find out that our bodies is this temple. And I knew from prior people in jail that the Bridge to Life program was a faith-based program, and I just figured that would probably be the best place to start. And I knew it was a 12-month program, and I was like, look, I've already been in jail for 12 months. I've been away from that scene. What's 12 more months? That's another year that I got underneath my belt as being clean and learning as much as I can for the Lord, and it couldn't hurt. So that's what it was.
And so another amazing thing is this guy, he's a wonderful Christian guy that works downtown at Crabtown. That's a seafood place. And Brother Irvin there, he's just got a heart for guys, like Dusty and them. And what people don't realize is that it's not working in this scene, how hard it is for guys like this with a record to get a job. It
Yeah.
is extremely hard. And when somebody like him will give them that opportunity, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, jobs are more plentiful now, but back then, it was hard to get a job anywhere. And this guy gives, he and Steve both, a job bussing tables. But I'm telling you, it was amazing. You could go in there, and this guy right here, he'd be bussing tables and telling you what God had done for him.
Really?
And telling his story. And God used it so many, many times.
He actually completed the Bridge to Life, the 12-month program, and then they would let you stay on and go into their work program. So he was still living at the mission. He did 12 months in the rehab and the recovery, and then they're there with the work program so they can work and still have a place to stay.
And Brother Dusty, tell them this, bussing tables, and that's, you don't make big money bussing tables, but he was so determined to straighten his record out. How many $1,000 did you owe? Have you ever figured it out?
Oh, it was a lot. There was, like I said, I'd never paid any of my fines throughout that whole time. I've never took care of any of that stuff. So there was at least $5,000, if not more, in fines and restitution and court costs and all that just piled up over the years. And praise God, it all got paid off. And when
Bussing tables, can you imagine that? He paid off all of those fines bussing tables.
And then at the end of it, I went to go make one of my last payments, and this was another experience from God, as a miracle, like Brother Lindell said, from God, that I got there, and the lady was like, I was making my payment, she just had this look on her face, and she was like, well, I don't know how to tell you this, sir. She said, but somehow, some way, there's still some money that you owe. There's like $2,000 something that you owe that just kind of went through the loop, and they found a loophole that you still got to pay. And she said, but since you've been doing such a great job and you've been in here every other week making your payments and you're down to the last payment, she said, if you can bring your last payment in 2 weeks, she said, I'll wipe all of it away because I have the power to do that. And I was like, I'll be back down here by the end of the day and have that money, you know, and, you know, sure enough, you know, praise God, he just kept working, you know, and just kept
I
opening
see,
doors. And,
like in your testimony, I see a guy clawing, fighting, scratching, kicking, doing whatever he can to get out of the hog pen, basically. And
now, it is a miracle from God, but you do have to have, we work with people like this all the time, but the one ingredient that they have to have, they really have to have a determination
to change.
I'm sick of this, and I'm gonna pull out of it.
And one thing,
and then God blesses that.
Of course, and one thing, while, you know, Brother Lindell mentioned bussing tables, that's not waitressing or waiting tables. You could have probably done it a lot sooner, but
it's cleaning tables,
cleaning
floors, and everything.
Exactly. I saw something one time that there's a guy leaned up on a shovel, and it says, "Don't pray for a hole if God's provided a shovel." And there's a lot of times, especially, you know, I have some similar background as yours. Sometimes people wait for some supernatural, just God to do it all, but he allows you to climb out of the gutter that you found yourself in, and he gives you the strength to do it, you know?
But Andrew, I think there's a good time to tell this too. The guys if people haven't been around this scene, they don't understand it, but these guys they're pretty ingenuity to get the money to keep their habit going.
Yeah.
And if you're in downtown, you know what I'm going to tell, don't you, brother?
yeah, I know.
And so, Brother Dusty was a professional, I understand, at stealing copper.
He was on the news.
He was on the news.
Oh. Yeah.
I never heard that.
I didn't know you were a news reporter.
I was a TV star.
But they stripped you might tell them how you even do that.
So,
I don't want to mean that. Sorry, you don't still do it.
no.
On this tutorial of how to steal copper.
Well, so
Dusty strip.
I still strip copper from time to time, but I do it legally now because God has got such an amazing sense of humor.
Yes, he
It's
does.
just unreal. But so, you know, some people find just buildings and stuff that are vacant, and mine was more of a condemned buildings and abandoned buildings that had already been torn into, and I was just kind of taking whatever was left over. Try not to get in as much trouble as possible, but so, you know, I'd go in and I'd find stuff to scrap and to steal pretty much because it wasn't mine, and that's pretty much what it was, you know, was stealing. And well, not pretty much, that's what it was stealing. But so you steal copper and you take it to the scrapyard and just turn it in and make money off of it. And like I said, so God has got such a great sense of humor that in this whole process of me bussing tables and working and at the Bridge to Life, and there were so many people there that was trying to change people's lives. I was doing a Bible study on Saturday mornings, and there was a gentleman there that would come in and help us and kind of talk to us. And he said one morning, he's like, look, I got something for you. He said, there's a friend of mine that owns an electrical company that needs a good guy to go to Tennessee to stay and live and to work down there for him. And he said, I'm here every Saturday. I see you, whether it's snowing, whether it's raining, whether the sun is shining. You're always up bright and early, getting ready to go to work. You know, you're there every day. You're always early. And he said, there's nobody else that I'd rather recommend to help him out than you. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. And I had to pray to God once again, you know, just to help me through this because my physical conditions of all the stuff that I'd just done to my body, it was just kind of wore it out. And, you know, he took care of all that, you know. I was able to do the work, and a lot of it's physical, a lot of it's strenuous, you know, and he's just been providing, you know. So now I'm working on becoming an electrician. So
electrician.
The guy that was pulling copper out of the walls is now the guy installing it.
Amen.
Yeah, that's God's sense of humor.
That's God's sense of humor.
Amen.
Guy that's pulling the copper out of the walls, putting it back now.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I love it so much.
No,
Andrew,
sorry. Go ahead.
I want to say this. When he was talking about going to work and going to work early, they lived at the Mission. He and Steve both lived at City Rescue Mission, and they worked at Crabtown, which was probably a mile or
Maybe a mile and a half.
mile and a half, 2 miles.
Okay.
City miles.
And
Long
city
way.
miles, and they worked late hours and early hours, and they walked. They walked back and forth to work. If it was raining, if it was snowing, whatever. Both of those men, they had a desire to change, and they were willing to do that, and that spoke something, I'm sure, to the man that recommended that he do this job.
Andrew, at some point, we're going to have to get this silent lady to say something.
I was actually thinking about that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, man, she has lasted 26 minutes without saying anything.
So here's the story. Brother Dusty came all this time, worked with him, and one day, out of the blue,
After he had been to Tennessee.
He'd been to Tennessee, done that stint, come back. He tells Sister Cindy, tell him.
He said, I have a lady friend. And we're like, oh, really? You have a lady friend? And he was like, yeah. And we had never even met her. And he told us that they had kind of actually been in the drug scene together. And I will let her share what she wants to of her testimony. But when we met Laura, we understood, we could see that God was doing a work in her life too. And this lady
I wonder what she sounds like.
is a precious lady. I love her so much.
Well, I did not. Well, I grew up in church. I started going to church when I was 5 years old. I was drugged to church. I didn't really like it. You know, that was right around the time when Sunday evening they would have all the best Disney movies on. So I would dread going to church every Sunday. And I mean, I listened and I got a little bit of wisdom going to church, but it didn't click with me. So when I became a teenager, I fell away. You know, I started smoking and I started drinking, and so I did things I wanted to do, and I got sober for a little while, and then I got back out there. You know, it was on and off type thing. I got married, and I was dead against any hard drugs, you know, whenever I was married. But my husband at that time, he was not, and he had a hidden life, and so.
You know, I found that to be common.
Yeah.
Even among people that, like, you had a boundary set that you weren't willing to cross. And even in my, which, of course, Brother Lindell and Sister Cindy have worked with a lot more than me, but those that I have tried to work with in my ministry, they are even ashamed of the distance that they've went, and they hide it from even people that you wouldn't think that they would.
Right. And, you know, his hidden life came to light one day, and, you know, and I had 3 children from him at the time. And so I was trying and struggling to keep our marriage. And a thought came to my head, well, if you can't beat him, join him, which was definitely the worst mistake I ever made.
Let me ask you this point. So had you done hard drugs up before then, or
No.
just what you was talking about, kind of drinking and stuff?
Drinking and smoking weed, and that's about it. And yeah,
And that was your boundary. That's where you felt comfortable. You didn't want to cross the line.
right.
You know, you had a standard, you know.
You know, I can see the pressure
Yeah, of
your
course.
husband at that time that would put on you to try to, you know, just have a life with him, I guess.
Well, you have 3 children. And what's going on in your mind is, how do I keep this thing together?
Right.
And you were tired of fighting. And then when this thing come to a head, you're like, you know what? If I give in, maybe.
Maybe he'll see me.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe if he sees me,
Maybe he'll love me.
then maybe we can get out of it, or, you know, or maybe he'll love me. Yeah.
But you said you thought it was the worst decision you ever made.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The
So-
people that he brought into our house, you know, were horrible. He brought women into our house that were, you know, it was secret behind my back. It was not a lifestyle.
So the decision that you made actually made your worst nightmare come to life. It got even worse.
Oh, definitely.
So
And
was
then-
it this meth? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was meth. And so he went to prison, and it's I ended up keeping all his friends. They were all still coming to my house, and they were actually, some of them even knew Dusty at the time, but we didn't know each other. And so about 2001, I decided 2004, I was going to get sober. So I went back home, and I was pregnant by another man. My husband was in prison. And so I went home, and I got sober. And I was sober for about, I would have to say 4 years. And I was alone that whole time. And I went to church, and I ran into a guy, which was another big mistake, because I thought he was, he's going to church. But he was in a sober type program, Celebrate Recovery.
So what you're saying is most everybody
that
you
goes
ran
to
to
church
or whatever,
yeah,
they had another life and they was
yeah,
not good for you and your family.
right. I mean, even though you're in church, sometimes you got to be careful.
Oh, I know.
You should always pray, definitely, for God to bring someone to you, and not just go out on your own, because you never know what you're going to walk into.
So what I just heard is you're 4 years sober. By the way, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to church. I don't hear of a transformation yet with God. So you're doing it with your own strength,
Right.
which you know is not going to last.
Right.
And then the snare from the one we hate the worst, the devil, just had it perfectly set for you to fall once again. And it's even more defeating now because you did it on your own. You were 4 years sober, and the perfect storm arrives once again.
Yeah.
What kind of church was it? Pentecostal?
It was Pentecostal.
Okay. I thought you had a Pentecostal background.
Yeah. And they had a lot of programs going on, and
You're in Oklahoma City, I
yeah,
assume?
it was.
Okay, so you actually had a Pentecostal background.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, quite different than yeah.
But by then, by the time I met him, I had already had 6 children, though.
Okay.
There was a little gap in time of things that have happened in my life.
Right.
I ended up having 6 kids, and once I started dating him, God would take him out of my life and put him in jail for a little bit, and I'd get my senses, but he would never leave me alone. And finally, I got smart, and I decided to leave him alone for good, but I had lost everything and my children in the process.
That was tough.
Yeah.
So I guess DHS got...
Yeah, DHS got...
What's the ages of your children?
Right now, my youngest is, she's going to be 16 in December. My second youngest daughter, she'll be 18 this year. And my youngest son will be 19 this year in July. July is birthday for both Savannah and my son Tyler. Aaliyah's my youngest. And then I have Brianna, Cayman, and Brooklyn. And I'm going from the youngest to the oldest. Brooklyn is my oldest.
I have 3 children, so it's a lot easier for me to keep up with them. But 6, I would get lost as well.
But yeah, my oldest, Brooklyn, she's going to be 26 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm obviously hearing your testimony for the first time, but one thing that I did see is whenever you talked about losing your children, I saw something come over you. But then again, whenever you start talking about your children and naming them, I see a light just come all over your face. You love your children.
I do.
She does, yes.
I do love them. I have 3 of them very actively in my life right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. My oldest children, they, whenever DHS took all 6 of them out of my life, my older 3 were old enough that they would run away from DHS, and they kept coming back. They'd come back home.
Yeah.
And Andrew, I don't want to say too much here, but along with that, there was a lot of tragedies. I think your husband passed away during that time, unfortunate circumstances. So she's had a lot of heartache, but God has turned it around.
Right, and we're getting there.
Yeah.
Did your husband come back into your life?
He tried many times, but he was very, very abusive.
I understand.
So I kept my distance from him, and I wouldn't allow myself to get back into his life. I would like to say that that we, as a family, tried to help him. He had a really bad addiction, which I believe his drug addiction led to paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So you could never trust anything that was going on in his life. But we did try to help him a lot.
So a lot of storms.
Yeah.
And I think, Andrew, that's what, sometimes kids don't realize the end of it, but everybody's story doesn't turn out like these two. God had mercy on them, and they turned it around, but
Yeah, there was...
sound like he has ended up very bad.
There was some time whenever, we had been dating back before we got ourselves together. Whenever we got ourselves together and started going to church, we had a realization that we could probably maybe just only be friends, because my husband was still alive and I was not divorced.
Right.
So
But he did pass.
He ended up passing away. And that's
So
unfortunate.
that kind of leads us up to where Sister Cindy found out that she was even around.
And so the copper crook, he's over there in Tennessee courting, I guess, or he comes back and
I never heard the story. I guess y'all was corresponding all this time?
We met back in 2012. He come crawling through a window of one of a mutual friend.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
it's kind of Romeo and Juliet situation there.
Something like that.
Yeah, he come crawling through this window, and I was attracted to him immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you saw him through that door, you're like, man, this is going to be my future.
This is
Door, sound like he come through a window.
so.
It might have been his old savage ways, the old Native American ways coming in. All right, come here.
You need to be a salesman.
I was being a salesman at the time.
So the transformation, whenever you gave your life to God, when did that happen? Were you guys already together before?
We were together, me and him, and we had discussed the Bridge of Life several times, getting ourselves together, but we never did it. He was going to court with me. Well, we went to jail together one time.
How romantic.
I know. We went to jail together one time, so we had to go to court together, and we had talked about getting sober and stuff, but we'd always run into things.
So many problems. You're juggling so many problems, and if for somebody, and honestly, guys, I expect a lot of church people who have never experienced this. They're like, how do they even function with this kind of this amount of problems going on at the same time? And if they've never experienced it, they have no idea. You're literally spinning your wheels. It feels like.
Yeah, we did a lot of walking.
Pretty much, yeah. A lot of spinning our wheels, Yeah, it's amazing the stuff that drugs will take away from you, and just the mind frame that it'll put you in. I mean, you just come numb to everything, and then whenever you come sober, you start coming down, it all starts piling back up. And
things that you pushed off, you have to face.
Yeah.
Things that were 4 or 5 years old, they don't go anywhere.
No.
Right.
You have to face. So it's like, wow, I'm really behind on things that I'm having to,
Yeah.
file through in my mind, emotions that come back up,
I believe God separated us for a reason. We had gotten into a big argument, and that's when he went to jail, and I had to decide what I was going to do, because my brother had told me, because I was living at my mom's house, that if he found a guy in the house with me, that he was going to make me leave. Well, he found me and Dusty in the house, and this was like right around the same time that he went to jail, and so I got a 5-day eviction notice from my brother. So I had to make a decision, and it was either you're going to live out on the streets, you're going to continue to do your drugs, you're going to live that lifestyle, you don't know where you're going to end up, you're going to live from drug house to drug house to drug house. If that's what you really want, then that's the route you're going to take. But I decided that's not what I wanted.
So was that the ultimatum that made you decide I'm going to God?
Yeah, I decided, obviously I needed to find a good place to stay,
Sure.
so I was already like 30 days sober at this time, and I decided to put myself at First Step for Women. And I was there maybe 6 weeks, and then I went to a sober living home, and I got a job working Dollar Tree. That was back in 2015, and God's been working in my life ever since.
He has.
And at first I didn't want to become a manager at all, for the first 2 years that I worked there, but I became a manager at Dollar Tree, and I used being able to sit in an office and speak one-on-one with some of the girls that come in there, because it's mostly girls that run register. And, I used that platform there to help lots of girls that are going through a lot of the same situations.
Yes.
So the way you got in communication with these two at the end of the table was from Dusty.
Yeah, he had told me that he wanted the people at church to meet me, and he wanted them to okay us. Basically, he wanted their approval on me before he.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that. You know what? No, you know what though? That shows the confidence that Dusty has in your leadership.
Yeah.
And that's special. That really is.
When God saved Dusty, he done a lot for him. The guy's the most respectful guy you could ever have. I'm his pastor, and he's been under my counsel. And, God just done a work for him. He's just such a new man. Really is.
I will say, when he told us he had a job in Tennessee, we're like, oh, Dusty, that is the worst thing you could have ever done. That's how I was feeling. But you know what? I saw later on that was truly God's will. Mm-hmm. When Dusty went to Tennessee to work that time, he didn't stay out of church. He went immediately, found a church. We kept in contact with him. And Brother Lindell and I actually got to go. Yep. We were going somewhere, and we took a detour through Chattanooga just to go see him on his job. Yeah. And, we could see this is God's plan.
It was right after that I started coming to church.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Sure
I remember that.
Because, they invested so much in you, and then they have to just trust, Lord, we're trusting the work that you did in Dusty's life. And to see that you took the initiative to stay, faithful to the house of God, that probably meant how much to you guys.
And Andrew, everything that happened during the COVID deal is not bad, because they came to me. They were both eligible to marry and said, we would like to get married.
Yeah. And
would you believe, in our little church down here before we moved here, right in the middle of COVID, we had a wedding ceremony and they got married. And it was a wonderful thing. It really was. It was a beautiful thing. And even some of their family got to come to that wedding. And I think they were amazed at the change. And I also got to meet, did we get to meet all of your children? No, all except two, I believe.
Yeah, all of them. Well, no, all but three. The three younger. The three younger are just recently.
Yes. So there was
coming
three
back
there
into my life
yes.
now.
Yeah.
So little by little, God is restoring your life.
Yeah, He's also restoring my relationship with my brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, and he's just continued to work, and it's just amazing what he has done. I mean, the transformation in him alone. Yes. I never thought I would have a husband so wonderful.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, God is just so faithful. Once you start living for Him and start putting Him first and start seeking Him, and allowing Him to work, it's just amazing at what He'll do and the things that He'll do for you. It's just, every time we turn around, He just keeps blessing us and opening up doors and turning our lives around and restoring our families and putting people in our lives that need to be there. It's just wonderful.
There's some time back, and Cindy can tell you this, Sister Laura came to her and she was praying over here. Tell her this.
Oh, it was one night after church, and Laura, I think I shared this on the episode you did with us, but Laura came to me and after prayer, and she said, God spoke to me tonight. Mm-hmm. And I would love for her to tell that, because it was so special that night.
Now I'm nervous. I can't remember the exact days, but the Lord, He did speak to me, and He said that my redemption was near. And it was like 2 weeks after that, my daughter Savannah, she ended up in my house, and I got to see her. A week before that, I got to see Aaliyah and Savannah, my youngest daughter, and her together. But Savannah's actually been here in church with me.
Now, 4 of your children have been in church here. You can see the hand of God just one by one working on her children.
Well, and I'm going to revert back to what I said. Every time you mention your children, I see the joy. Yes. And I thought about it so much, even whenever you're talking about your kids and God speaking to you and saying your redemption's nigh. When David was in, I don't think anybody could have done any worse than David, you know. And his prayer of repentance said, restore unto me the joy of thy salvation. Little by little, God's just giving you your joy back through your children. You know.
Well, she was praying specifically for her family. That's
Right.
what she was sharing with me that night. And I asked her, I said, get a journal and write down the date, because this is a promise from God.
Yeah.
And I believe it was.
I think it was 2 weeks later, is that right?
Yeah.
It started happening.
There's, also an amazing thing that my mom even likes Dusty. She's never, ever liked anyone that I brought home. And she adores him. And that's really special to me. Because I used to think, whenever I was out there on drugs, that love exists, but it doesn't exist for me.
Right.
But God has changed all that.
Yes.
Right.
Amen.
And I believe also the amazing thing you said is at one time your mother didn't even want you in her house. Is that right? Your family?
Not my mother. My
Okay.
mother, she's ill, and
Yes.
she didn't need me there because I was bringing all kinds of,
Like, was it a brother or whatever? They
Yeah,
didn't
it
want
was
you
my
there
brother.
because of your lifestyle.
I was bringing all kinds of people that didn't
What's
need to be
wonderful
in the
now
house.
is she and Brother Dusty are her caregivers. They
Yeah.
actually live with her, and it's amazing to me. Even her job description has to be, I have to be off to take my mother.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, whenever I got out of rehab, I ended up back in my house, my mom's house. There was no electricity, no water. It was just basically her house. And I worked hard enough, and I got all that stuff turned back on. And then one day I was listening to a preacher on TV, and my daughter Brianna was there. And she was like, he said, and to that woman who's not even supposed to be in that house, God made a way.
Wow.
My daughter, she came in the room, she goes, he's talking to you, Mom. So, God has worked to my life, and I see it, I know it, I feel it.
Yeah. And it's evident. It's evident. We can see it. I want to ask you guys a question, because as a conclusion, I want to ask you a question. You obviously both have two amazing stories that we've heard, and I really appreciate you pouring your heart out to try to help somebody. And with that said, there's going to be a total stranger that hears your testimony that's going to identify with the person that you used to be. What do you tell that person that's in the darkest of nights? How do you encourage them to continue to go on for the Lord, given how hard it was for you?
Just seek him. If you feel that little nudge, or if you hear that name being called and you don't know where it's coming from, just seek the Lord, because he's calling you. He's calling you home.
What I can say is that feeling that I felt when that light was shined down on me and I lost everything. I lost my speech. I lost my movement. I lost my sight, all of that. There was just such a wonderful feeling. There was no sorrow. There was no pain. There was nothing but love and compassion. And the light was just so bright that there will be no more darkness. There will be no more sadness. There will be no more sickness. And it says that in the Bible that when the end of time comes in and he calls us home, that we are going to go to a place of glory, and there's going to be no more sadness. There's going to be no more darkness. There's going to be nothing but joy and happiness. And that is what I felt that day. And without a shadow of a doubt, that is what it's going to be. His word is true. Right. Everything that they've said and everything that's happened in the Bible, I've come to find out is true.
Right.
And he gave me an experience of that, and maybe that's what it is I need to tell, and maybe that's what it is I need to share to somebody out there that just hold on a little bit longer, just to keep searching and seeking and fighting for the Lord, because there will be a time that it'll end, and we will be going up to heaven with our loved ones, and we will be in the promised land, and it's going to be glorious. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah. So if you're lost, you're depressed, you have anxiety, if you're just you don't know where you're going tomorrow, but if you just seek the Lord, he can bring back joy into your heart. Yes. He can direct your path. He can He can be your provider, your father, your friend.
Anything you
everything.
need.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, I really do appreciate you guys sharing your testimony. I really do.
Thank you for
There's
having
no
us.
telling who this is going to help. There's no telling how many people are going to hear this testimony and relate to you and look at their circumstance and go, if Dusty and Laura can do it, I can do it.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.